speakers today. And before we get started, I just want to let you know that we will end the webinar with a question and answer session. And so feel free throughout to add any questions you have to the chat box on the right side of your screen. And another note, this webinar will be recorded and shared with all attendees. And if you would like a copy of the PowerPoint slides, feel free to reach out to one of our presenters whose contact information will be available at the end of the presentation. So we have two great presenters sharing their experiences with you today, Rodney Apple and Scott Singer. So without further ado, here's Rodney Apple.
Thanks everyone for joining today. Today we're going to cover LinkedIn optimization tips for supply chain professionals. I have a co-presenter, Scott Singer, so we're going to get into some introductions and then we'll move forward from there. Today we're going to cover breaking down the basics of a LinkedIn profile. We're going to get into how supply chain recruiters like myself utilize LinkedIn, take you through a case study of a real live search that I'm working on right now for a VP of Logistics. We're going to talk about ways you can optimize your profile and attract the right audience, and then we're going to get into tips specifically for supply chain professionals and how you can integrate the right keywords into your profile. We'll wrap up with a summary and then we'll get into a Q&A. So quick introduction. I am the founder and president of SCM Talent Group. We are a national supply chain recruiting firm. I've personally filled over 1,000 professional to executive level supply chain positions, 17 plus years in end-to-end supply chain recruiting with a pretty good balance between corporate and agency. I actually led supply chain recruitment for 10 plus years, spanning Coca-Cola, Home Depot, Kimberly-Clark, Cummins, and a few other companies, and have been serving as the career coach for Apex since 2014. My co-presenter is Scott Singer. Scott, you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Scott Singer. I'm the president of Insider Career Strategies. I am a certified professional resume writer, career coach, and a talent acquisition consultant. So I have worked with hundreds of clients through my resume writing and LinkedIn profile development work and career coaching. My background is I have a bachelor's degree from Boston University. I have my MBA in Business and Human Resources from University of Michigan in Dearborn. And before that, I spent about 19 years on the same side of the fence as Rodney. So I had recruited for Ryder, a major logistics company, Bacardi, Motorola, and a couple other companies on the professional and on the agency side.
Great. Thanks, Scott.
All right.
You want to take the audience through this slide? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about why LinkedIn matters. Everybody here who's on the call probably has an account on LinkedIn, but I think it's important to understand the context of it. This isn't Facebook. This isn't where you go ahead and you show pictures of your weekend in Cabo. This is also, most importantly, it's not your resume. It's not the same kind of platform. It doesn't work the same way, and it's not used in the same way by the market. So first of all, it is your billboard on the job market. The analogy that I like to use is that your resume is your marketing brochure. That is what's going to generate some interest if somebody has it in their hands. But LinkedIn is really the billboard, and as I'm sure as you've driven by a billboard before, if it catches your attention, it'll kind of resonate in your mind, and you'll go ahead and maybe if there's a phone number or an email, you'll follow up on that or drive around the corner to the McDonald's that's advertising. Same thing with LinkedIn, and right now it's important to know that every recruiter is using LinkedIn to look for talent, and on average they're spending somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000 a seat. That's for one recruiter to be able to look through the whole system on LinkedIn. So if you think that your LinkedIn network is just the people that you're directly connected to, it's not. It's you have visibility under all of, along with the other 500 million other people that are on LinkedIn to the recruiters. So they're paying good money to be able to see everybody in there. This is a job board whether you thought about it that way or not. So a couple things to keep in mind. A full profile with a good headshot is essential, and by headshot I mean a good photograph of your head, a three-quarter shot. Again, this is your billboard. You want to look professional. And a full profile, Rodney's going to walk you through this, but a full profile is important because it's going to help you show up on a lot of the recruiter searches, whereas the headshot, the photograph, the profile picture is going to reinforce your professionalism. The other thing to keep in mind that LinkedIn is also very important because it is a two-way communication tool. So not only do the recruiters that are out there see you, but you have the ability to reach out to them and to hiring managers. So you can use this. It's a great way to grow your network, even people that you may not know personally. It's a good way to grow that. And I want to close that slide by saying it really is worth taking the time to becoming a power user. There's a lot of features in LinkedIn that I think you'll find will have a definitive return on investment for your career. Rodney?
And before you get started with writing your profile or rewriting it, I think it's very important to put your mind, and go through the exercise. Think like a marketer, really getting to understand, who your key audience is. And so if you're a job seeker, you want to frame your profile and target that specific audience. Who are my target employers? If you work in a certain function, you've got deep expertise in, say, it's transportation or warehousing, you certainly want to do a good job of highlighting your experience, making sure you're integrating the right keywords. Same thing on the industry side. If your career has been focused in retail, that's where you want to stay. You want to make sure you've got retail-type terms, and as well as the job level. So if you're a job seeker, think of it in that respect. Let's say you're in procurement, you're always looking for the best suppliers. You may want to think about what type of companies fit my supplier profile. If you're in a sales and marketing role, you want to highlight the types of products and services that you sell, bearing in mind who are my ideal customers that I'm looking to attract to my profile. Marketers call it a persona exercise. It's basically just getting out a blank sheet of paper and really writing down who are the types of companies or types of industries and so forth that I'd like to attract. And then when you start going through the writing exercises, looking at keyword research and things like that, make sure you're speaking to that audience and creating highly relevant content that can resonate with your audience as well. So try to put your mind inside of your audience and focus on how you've contributed value to your organization as well. So here's some basics of a LinkedIn profile. You have the ability to create your own background image. There's plenty of tools out there where you can craft an image, and you've got professional headshot, as Scott mentioned. You want to try to have 3/4 making up of your actual head, so keep that in mind. I think the headline here is really the most important aspect. You want a headline that's not your job title, but something that really stands out and speaks to your background, more like a marketing headline. Think of it as a marketing approach as opposed to just listing your company and your job title.
And let me just add up on that one. Let me back up on that point. When a recruiter does a search and they pull up a list of individuals that show up, there are 3 things that are going to show first and foremost. Yeah, basically what they will see is they will see your name, they will see your picture, and they will see your headline. And if those don't catch their interest, they're not going to keep reading.
Great point, Scott. Very true. So here's your professional summary. We're going to get into some details of how to optimize these sections, but basically, who am I? You want to answer the basic why questions. Who am I? Get into the type of value you convey. You want to make sure you've got the right supply chain related keywords. We do end-to-end supply chain, so as you can see, I've got everything listed from the logistics, procurement, planning, and so forth. I think it's ideal to list a call to action, especially if you're looking for a position. It certainly can help to list your contact information. If you do that, just know that anyone on the internet can access that, so just be very careful. You may not want to list your work email or phone number. And it might be a good idea to go out to Google Voice and create a separate phone number and maybe even a separate Gmail account for the purpose of your job search. And if you're going to list any kind of personal contact information on your profile, just be prepared for anyone to call, including spammers. So another thing you can do is add rich media. So in this case, I've got a link to our brochure. If you click that, it'll pop up in our brochure. And then I've got a 1-minute introductory explainer video on our firm and service offerings. So highly encourage you to include information like that on your profile. And then next you dive down into your different positions. I'm just going to include one, making sure you've got your title. Feel free to elaborate on that title because us recruiters are using filters when we recruit and search in LinkedIn. So a lot of times we're going to put in the most popular titles. If your current position doesn't quite reflect what that popular title might be in the marketplace, you may want to expand upon it in your position title. And then from there, conveying what you do, the type of company you work for, and so forth within that summary. And again, you can attach rich media to pretty much every position on your profile. Here I've got a list of positions that we have filled over the years within supply chain. There's a sample list there, and then we've got another brochure that talks about the different types of recruitment services that we provide. And then the next section, you've got your education. Be sure to complete that. I have had to fill positions, plenty of positions that require degrees, and I think some people just don't get that far in their profile. They leave it out, and if you leave out the degree and the position requires a degree, then guess what? You're not going to show up in that search. From here, be sure to populate your skills and endorsements. Again, this is a fantastic place for you to put in your primary keywords that represent your background, and then from there you can have people come along and give you endorsements. And then lastly, with your recommendations, I strongly recommend, this is just a way to validate your profile and your background. I think I've got a total of 19 and I've given 9. So I think it's a good idea to maybe shoot for at least 5 to 10. You can reach out to, especially if you've got past supervisors that you've worked for. Those are always the best folks to have provide a recommendation. And then from here, we basically have publications. I've been featured in several articles in various supply chain trade journals, so I've got some of those listed here. And each of those provides a separate link back out to the publication, so that's just a great way, again, to validate subject matter expertise in a certain area. List out any supply chain organizations that you belong to. I'm a member of APICS, obviously, serving as their career coach, as well as CSCMP. And then if you've participated in any projects or led any projects that you'd like to show off to your audience, your target audience, here's a fantastic place to list those projects. And you can also go into LinkedIn and tag people that were on that project team. Lastly, under interest, LinkedIn has grouped the following categories: companies that you follow, groups that you belong to, any schools that you've attended, and then influencers that you follow as well. So I'm going to take you guys through a case study. I think it's important to understand how recruiters use LinkedIn because once you see the following information, hopefully some light bulbs will go off, reinforcing the importance of having a complete profile and making sure you've got the right information, the right content, the right keywords listed in the appropriate places because that's how you're going to appear in search results. Very similar to Google. If you've heard the term search engine optimization, if you think about the algorithms and all of the science and art that goes into how a website ranks for certain keywords, LinkedIn operates with a very similar framework. So it's important to make sure you've got the right titles, industries, and things like that listed because if you don't, you may not show up in the search results. So we're working on a search right now. We're down to 2 finalists that go in next week. It's for a VP of Logistics, one of our top clients, a small cap food manufacturing company. They've got about $1.5 billion in revenue. Core experience we're looking for here is deep expertise in transportation, warehousing, customer service, finished goods planning, someone that's led a large network optimization. There's going to be a need to consolidate warehouse manufacturing facilities, someone that's led a supply chain transformation. It's a multi-year journey. They're implementing Lean and Six Sigma methodologies across their business, and they're also upgrading their systems on the supply chain side, transportation management system, warehouse management, leading up to a large ERP implementation. They're looking for somebody, ideally, that's got food, beverage, manufacturing, but they would accept someone that's worked in a CPG or fast-moving consumer goods environment. So how do we use LinkedIn to find candidates? So we're going to take this information. This is the basic profile. And we're going to use what we call, it's Boolean logic. It basically is just putting the search terms together so so LinkedIn can tell what you're looking for. And in this case, we're looking for a VP of logistics. And I'm going to want to reach out to folks, maybe they're a notch above VP. And if you look at this, you can understand, I'm trying to think outside of the box. Some people might use the term head of logistics. Some people might use VP, or they'll have a dot, V dot, P dot. I don't want to miss anyone. I'm not going to take any chances. So I put those in there. And the way this search string works, in the title section, I can search current titles, your past title, or a combination of your current and past, meaning your entire profile. So if anyone shows up as a VP or a V.P. or vice or SVP or EVP or head, if they have that in their title, current or past, and they have one of these terms, logistics or supply chain or operations, okay, they're going to show up in the search results. But they also must have the following information. And again, I'm looking for somebody that has supply chain transformation, or they've done a network optimization study. You have to do network modeling as part of that study. So these are very common search terms that I'm going to include as a requirement. And I'm also going to put in, okay, they have to have warehouse management system experience. So WMS is the popular acronym. I'm also going to spell that out, warehouse management system. And if somebody's worked with multiple implementations, they might have an S on the end. So you can kind of see how this can get a little bit dicey in terms of having the right keywords. So, think like a recruiter when you're putting your profile together, knowing this is exactly how we build out our search strings when we run a search for candidates. Under the skills section in LinkedIn, I'm going to look for just some basic terms like transportation, distribution. Again, WMS is important. We can select industries, so and obviously as a member or user of LinkedIn, you can put in your industry. You get to select one. I'm going to go with food production, food and beverages, consumer goods, and then some people put their function, logistics and supply chain. And then from there, I'm going to target certain companies, so we can search by companies. I've been asked to look for folks from Kraft Heinz, so I'm going to show you what this looks like in LinkedIn. We have a lot of filters. Again, the LinkedIn Recruiter license is the premium product on LinkedIn, and we've been using it as a firm for several years. All of our recruiters have licenses. And it gives us access to the entire LinkedIn database. It's not based on the number of people that each of our recruiters are linked to. It's the whole database. And that's what we pay for to have access to. So here I'm going to be looking for current titles based on that search string that we just reviewed. I'm looking for folks that are based in the United States. This is a national search. And then from there I'm going to pepper in some skills, transportation, distribution, WMS implementation, logistics management, and so forth.
Rodney, let me just make a comment here. For those of you who are looking for a job, one of the most important things that you can do is you can circumvent the process. And what I mean by that is, when you apply to a job online, you have the ability to go ahead and apply, through Monster, Career Builder, LinkedIn, or wherever. But if you have a premium subscription, you may not have all of the tools that Rodney has here, but you will have better search capability, and you'll be able to see more of the database. So if you applied for a job as a director of supply chain, and you went in and you used some of these Boolean search technology, these strategies to find a VP of supply chain, you can find these individuals, ping them, and let them know that you're out there. So a lot of these you can apply directly to your own job search.
That is an excellent point. You can use the exact, and actually I would recommend that you go out on Google, just run a search for Boolean search tips. You'll find a plethora of great advice to help you shape these search strings so you can laser in on the right types of people that you're looking for. That is a great tip there, Scott. So the next slide, just filtering on down. Again, I'm going to start out with craft and see if I can find folks that work for craft. LinkedIn Recruiter will suggest other companies that you can easily click on. And they're always adding new filters to make our jobs easier when it comes to lasering in on the right types of candidates. And with this particular search, I ran a general search like I'm running now, and then I went back and I printed out the top 100 food companies, food manufacturing companies, and I just went down the entire list looking for people that either currently worked at that company or in the past. And of course, we had certain companies we were targeting, and I went through all 100 food companies, and that's one of the ways that I was able to expand the search results. If you go on down the list here, there's the industries that we just talked about, and then there you can't quite see that keyword search string, but that basically has logistics, transportation, network optimization, and so forth. So when you look at the filters that we have access to, that was just a sampling. Here's the entire list here. So we can search by a radius to a zip code. Could be 10 miles, could be 15, 100, 300. That's how we find people for a local search. So you want to make sure as a LinkedIn user or candidate that you have your correct address. If you happen to have moved and haven't changed this, you definitely want to get into LinkedIn and correct those settings and make sure you've got at least the right zip code and city and state in there. We can search by people that have that are bilingual. We can even search in profiles that are written in another language. I can't do that myself, but other people that are bilingual certainly can do that. They've added some new filters here. We can search if we're looking for a certain amount of years of experience. Let's say a client says, I want somebody that they have to have a minimum of 10. We can certainly go in and adjust that to where we're looking at people that only have 10 years of experience or more. Years at your current company. I may want to skip over people that have joined a company in the last, let's say, less than a year, knowing they're probably not going to be inclined to make another job move that soon. Years in their current position. If you have been involved in the military, we can search by veteran status. So if that applies to you, you may want to get into your profile and make sure you apply the right settings. I know a lot of companies are looking for, to hire veterans, and it's very good to see that too. We can also look and search by degree type. So if you've got a bachelor's or a master's, or if the position calls for a PhD. I actually had one of those recently, and this was a very handy filter to put in PhD, and I was able to drill into the right candidates. Seniority, just get, is it junior level, mid-level, senior officer, and so forth. More filters. We can search by current company, past companies, as we've talked about. We've got company types, company sizes. If I'm recruiting for a large Fortune 50 organization, I'm going to make sure I put in, I think this is broken down by number of employees. I'm probably going to put in something like at least 5,000 up to 10,000 plus. And on the flip side of that, if I'm recruiting for a smaller company, that look for folks that work in that small, wear multiple hats type environment, I may switch that filter the other way around where I'm looking for folks that are less than 1,000 employees. If someone follows your company, if I want to filter by people that follow SC Talent Group, I can put that in there, and so forth. And then here's some recruiting activity. We're able to go in and tag people. If I come across a profile, I create a tag for somebody that works in transportation. I can set those up and then filter by them later. So it almost acts as a CRM in a way. You can certainly, if you have LinkedIn Recruiter, you can actually get by without a fancy CRM by using some of the tags, the project folders, the notes that we can type in on a candidate's or user's background. We can look for people that have applied to our jobs if we posted them on LinkedIn. If I want to filter and search within those applicant pools, we can do that, and so forth. And then if you're willing to relocate, LinkedIn just added that in there. So if you are willing to relocate, I think you can go in there now and check that box. And then there is a new field that's not showing up here right now, but it's called Open to New Opportunities. So if you go in and click that, we can search for people and filter if they've checked that box. So that's a great box to check if you're, and whether you're in an active or a passive job search mode, it certainly can't hurt to check that.
And it should be noted, it's a dog whistle to your current employer. They can't see it.
That's right. Anyone that going back to craft, so if you're working at craft and you want to check that box, you're worried that someone at your employer may see it, they can't see it. That doesn't mean someone down the road at another company cannot see it, but anyone working at your current employer cannot see that you've checked that box, including their corporate recruiters.
All right, so let's talk about how you can leverage all of this to get noticed on LinkedIn. I know that was a lot of information, but Rodney and I thought it was very important to give you a peek behind the curtain because it helps to understand how the recruiters use these systems. So a couple of things. First of all, think about changing your last name. And what I mean by this is, I'm not going to change my name from Singer to Singersteen, but if you've got a certification, if you've got a PMP certification, put that after your name. If you have a PhD, put that after your name. This is all searchable, and it's one of those things that's going to pop up at the very top when it comes to the search criteria. As we talked about the headline, it's 120 characters of power. I mean, that's really a place where you can front load a lot of the skills you have. If it's a good place to indicate your interest. That title that you may have at a company, it doesn't mean anything on the outside. That's a good place to put an alternative title. Now, the summary is the 2,000 characters that you have below your headline. That's the introduction about yourself. And it's important to craft this, and there's a few different reasons. Number one is it tells your story, it tells your narrative, but also it is a place to sprinkle a lot of the keywords. People are not going to necessarily read through the whole profile if they don't necessarily want to. I mean, mostly what the recruiter is going to do is they're going to look at the top, see if it's the general gist of what they're looking for, and if it is, they're going to reach out to you and send you a note asking for your resume. But in the summary is a great place to include a lot of the keywords and primarily your skills. Yes, there is a section lower below, which Rodney showed you, that you can include a lot of your skills, but it also doesn't hurt to have them in there as keywords, often separated by bullets and ticks. So as far as other ways to get noticed, LinkedIn does reward you for activity, and what will happen is on the front page is the news stream. And it does help to get attention by creating or liking content. So, updates, photos, articles, and rich media too. So if you have an interesting video or PDF or project, this is a good place to do it. Now keep in mind, virtually every recruiter out there is using LinkedIn, and this might be a good place to get their attention. And if you post something, it's going to show also the title that you have, the headlines, the 120 characters. So it's going to show that and highlight. So if a recruiter stumbles across you and they say, I'm looking for somebody who's a supply chain manager, and you've put something really intellectually interesting related to your field up there, and they see your title, it may actually spark a conversation and for them to reach out to you. So the one piece of advice I would say is when you're putting the conversations up here, whether you're creating or liking content, is be smart about this. Things on the internet, I'm sure you're aware, last forever. They never go away no matter whether you delete it. And what will happen is that if you put something up there that's great or interesting, it's going to be shared, because what will happen is that people in your network will like it, and then it'll be shared beyond that. So people outside your network will start to see it as well. But if you put something offensive or questionable or not even really work-related, it could work against you in terms of your image. So you want to be professional about that. Likewise, LinkedIn does help you keep in touch. And what I mean by that is it reminds you about people's anniversaries and birthdays. So I'll give you an example. I just celebrated the 2nd anniversary of my business this week, and I got probably about 300 in-mails from people wishing me a happy anniversary. If I'm a recruiter or if I'm a hiring manager and I get the right one at the right time, again, it might spark interest and might say, hey, listen, I know you reached out for me for my birthday, but I see that you have the skills that I'm looking for. Also, as Rodney talked about, there is the dog whistle there for indicating whether you're open to new opportunities. And if you're a business, this is an interesting piece. If you're running a business, if you're marketing, but also think about this. I mean, let's say you're between jobs and you want to try some viral marketing. You can actually sponsor one of your postings as an advertisement so that people can see that you're out there. So if you've got something interesting to highlight, that's a great way to do it. Yes, it costs you per view or per click, but it may be worth it for you in this situation.
And on that note,
yep.
Scott, when you run that ad, and we've run several of these before, you can get extremely targeted. You could actually, let's say your dream is to work for, let's say, Apple, and you happen to live there, and you're having a hard time getting in. You live near their corporate office. You can actually go in and single out Apple. So you're only going to filter people. Only people that work at Apple are going to be able to see your ad. And then from there, you can put in certain job titles. Let's say you work in procurement. You could put in things like procurement, commodities, category, buyer. You probably want to target hiring managers, so use management-related titles. But you can drill down and get very, very specific to your target audience. And for a few $100, you might be able to get your information in front of them much easier than you would trying to chase people and send messages and follow-ups and so forth. So I just wanted to point that out. I have heard of people, not many people using this, but I have heard of a few people that have had success by running an ad in LinkedIn.
Absolutely, and if you're a marketer or a salesperson, it definitely can help. So let's talk about the headlines. It does appear next to your name on the searches, and it's 120 characters. So that means that you really need to be smart about how you use this. What I recommend is that you break it up into categories by ticks. So position type, about yourself, additional information, whatever you think might get people's attention. So you can see the example here: supply chain transformation, consumer products, network optimization, SCM systems. What we've done is we've already in 120 characters highlighted what this individual's skill set is. Logistics executive, consumer products, fast-moving consumer goods, transformation change agent, strategic planning, supply chain leader. The possibilities here are limitless. And by the way, if you are between opportunities, there's nothing wrong with having after your ticks as your last one seeking new opportunities. Sometimes it does get a recruiter to slow down and look at your profile a little bit longer. So then we get to the summary, and like we had talked about, this is a chance for you to really detail what you've done. You want to basically include the value or the accomplishments that you deliver. Each position and or your summary, you only have 2,000 characters, so there's really not much here. This is more targeted towards an individual company. So if you are writing about a particular company and a particular job, the structure that I recommend is you follow who the company is, what you've done in your role. So paragraph 1 is who the company is. It's a nice summary because let's say if you're looking in the logistics field, you may be working with a 3PL provider. Maybe somebody at an Apple or a Cisco doesn't know who they are, but that explanation can help shed some light on that and give some scope. You want to talk about what you've done in your role, what are your high-level responsibilities, and then you want to talk about some of your key accomplishments. And throughout this is where you include some of the skills and keywords. You really highlight what you've done and how you've done it. A couple of points here. Number 1 is you have the option of using bullets or paragraphs. If you don't care that your current employer thinks you're looking for a job or you don't have a current job, bullets are fine. You can certainly do this, but you want to do it in the first person. It's a conversational platform. The bullets, if you put them in, an employer might see it and they might say to themselves, it's structured a lot like their resume. Is this individual looking for a job? So just be aware of that. Whereas if I'm writing a LinkedIn profile for an individual who doesn't want their current employer to really know, but they want to have a professional profile, I do follow more of a paragraph type format. And then we get to number 22. So, Rod, this is you.
Yeah, so from a supply chain perspective, taking all of that advice into consideration that we've covered so far, I still think the most important thing you can do. I know when we built out our website, we have rebuilt it 3 times now in the last 5 years. We always put a lot of focus. It's all about the content. You'll hear marketers, you'll hear search engine, digital marketers talk about content. That's what it all comes down to. So writing is the key, but making sure you have the right keywords. I'm going to use the term integrated into the various sections of your profile is how you're going to show up in the top search results. Also, being an active member on LinkedIn is the key to getting better results as well. If you're just going to put a profile up, sit back and wait for things to happen, you may not ever move up into those those top slots for your primary keywords. So you want to conduct keyword research. It's, again, the number one way that you can boost your search rankings, just like you would on Google if you're putting a website together. So how do you do that? I think the first place I would start, surely you've got some curiosity. Well, I'm going to run a search. Let's say you live in Atlanta. You're a director of supply chain in the retail sector. Not a whole lot of retailers there in Atlanta that are based there. I used to live there and recruited there. But you want to put that in and then put it into your search results and just take a look and see who pops up as number 1, number 2, number 3, and then open their profiles. Get out a piece of paper, take some notes. What keywords are they using? Where do they have those keywords displayed? What are some other terms that you can pull out from that profile? Certainly you don't want to copy and paste someone's profile, but there is a lot of good information there by just searching for people just like yourself and then trying to emulate what they've done throughout each section and just to pull that advice in. And you can do the same thing with Google. You can run keyword searches in there. That's the good way to come up with some related searches as well. And then I would say just read up on some basics of search engine optimization so you can understand how marketers, especially digital marketers, use search engine optimization to help boost the rankings on their website, because LinkedIn, while it has a different algorithm that factors in the search rankings, it's going to be very similar to what Google uses. And a lot of it is based on content and keywords and having those keywords, let's call it replicated in the right places on your profile. And then lastly, if you're a member of any supply chain associations, most of them will have some type of dictionary or glossary of terms. I know APIX has one. I know CSCMP has one. They may have hundreds, if not thousands, of different keywords. And if you're not quite sure what to use, that would be a good place to give you some ideas.
And Rodney, I want to add one other thing. Recently, LinkedIn made some changes. So so that you're aware, if you make your profile public, Google actually will index your profile, and it gets highly ranked. So the work that you do, the content that you post, it does get out there on Google. So that's an even bigger incentive for you to do this. Some companies don't even use LinkedIn. Some of them just have people surfing Google to try to find people who are experts in their field.
Yep, I've definitely done that before. We bought into the LinkedIn Recruiter package. Another thing we talked about this, just make sure you have your education. And if you did go to a school that has a supply chain degree, again, you have a bachelor's or master's in logistics and supply chain. Don't just put that you have a bachelor's degree. Make sure you fill that out with the type of degree that you have received, especially if it's logistics, supply chain related, because that too can show up in a search term and help boost your results. The other sections in here, I believe, are indexed from a search perspective. So if you get some recommendations, those keywords should be pulled in and factored in by LinkedIn. Same thing applies to skills and endorsements. I would actually take a blank sheet of paper out if you're going to be developing or rewriting your profile and just run the keyword research. If you do use the Google Keyword Planner, it actually tells you how competitive a search term is. That means how many times is this search term being searched for, and you can filter that out by monthly basis, annual basis. It'll tell you how competitive it is as well with search marketers that are paying for advertising. That's how Google makes the bulk of their revenue. It'll tell you if there's a certain term like supply chain. Like I know I'll never rank for the term supply chain. And if you go into Google and put that in there, you know that somebody has spent an enormous amount of time and probably money to show up for that term. That's how it works. So make sure you have the right keywords in skills, endorsements. Same thing with organizations. All of this information is indexed. So from the top to the bottom, you want to put in the right keywords. Now, I will caution you, and the Google cautions, folks that own websites, search marketers, you do not want to what they call keyword stuff your LinkedIn profile. So be very, very careful that you're not just stuffing the same keywords, every other sentence. That actually could hurt your search results.
All right. So let's get into the summary here. Make sure you fill in every applicable field. There's a lot of additional information too, so think about your certifications, languages, anything else. LinkedIn likes a complete profile, and they will encourage you to keep filling it in until they consider it an all-star profile. And the more information that you have in there, you get better search results. Make sure you include a picture, a good picture. You know, that picture of you in the backyard, the barbecue with the beer in your hand, probably not the best choice. Something with you in a suit and smiling for the camera is the best choice. Make sure you grow your network strategically. You want to make sure that you have a large enough network so it does increase your exposure. And, you know, as I mentioned, don't be shy. You can reach out to companies. There's one last thing I just want to mention that we didn't really touch on very much, which is a lot of people ask, is a paid subscription to LinkedIn worth it for an individual? And I am in favor. I strongly advocate for this for a few different reasons. Number one is there is an element of pay for play. So if you do have a premium subscription, paid subscribers will actually bubble up slightly higher in the recruiter searches. Secondly, you do get a certain number of in-mails. That's the messages that you can reach out to people that you're not directly connected to. Another component of that is that if you have a premium subscription and another person has a premium subscription, and which recruiters usually do, you have the ability to send them an email without going against your quota. So that's free within your subscription. And then lastly is the better search capability, which enables you to find decision makers at these companies and reach out to them so that you can hopefully shake your candidacy loose. So that brings us to the Q&A. Katie?
Yeah.
Thank you, Rodney and Scott. So we'd like to give you guys a few minutes to just add any questions you may have for our presenters. And just another reminder, this webinar is being recorded, and we will send you a copy to access afterwards. We've also included Rodney and Scott's contact information, so feel free to write that down and reach out regarding any career advancement advice or recruiting help you may need. All right, so I'm going to give you guys another few seconds to add any questions you may have for our presenters.
Looks like we have a few already.
Okay, great. So let's get started. So for someone who is certified in supply chain with no direct supply chain experience, how would you highlight this on LinkedIn?
So I'll take that question. Scott, feel free to chime in. So yeah, obviously, as you're entering your career, you know, you're not going to have any direct experience to pull from. I think it's critical, especially if you're still in school, that it's almost mandatory these days that you get some kind of an internship or co-op. That's going to give you some substance and some content that you can highlight in your profile. But without having that, you know, you're going to want to focus in, again, making sure that you have the right keywords integrated throughout your profile. I would turn this in as an opportunity to market yourself. So without showcasing your experience that you don't have, you can at least showcase what you learned in school, the types of courses that you took. I would also make sure that you're describing the types of industries, the types of positions that you would want to work in. For example, if you know you want to work in logistics, you know, you may want to use that summary and the headline too, of course, to list out those types of titles that you would be interested in. And typically when you're coming out of school, you know, you're going to be looking at the entry point. Those titles are typically, you know, let's say you're in logistics, it could be logistics analyst, transportation analyst, things of that nature. And then, of course, in the headline, I would also put, you know, graduating such and such a date, and we'll be looking for opportunities starting such and such a date. That's a good way to broadcast to recruiters, employers, that you're ready to hit the marketplace. Scott, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that's really, really good feedback, Rodney. And I think the other thing that you want to think about doing is list any skills that you have that are applicable. You know, if you've done purchasing of any sort, if you've done any systems configuration, any types of projects that you've worked in as an undergraduate or in graduate school, these are all they're real experience. They just may not necessarily be paid experience. So the more that you can do to include those types of things or supply chain related activities that you've done if you're changing career, that's the way to go.
And I would add too that if you have honed in on your skills, if you're coming into like an analyst role, Excel is really a very top skill set that folks are looking for, being able to slice data. So if you've taken any courses, whether you took them yourself online or through your school, make sure you list those skills out, and anything you can do with Excel, like the VLOOKUPs, pivot tables, and those advanced Excel features. And any volunteer experience, I think recruiters are looking for, not just someone that's coming right out of school. All they've done is gone through school. They look for people that are outgoing. So if you volunteered for any committees, be sure to list those activities as well. It just shows that you've got some broad experience beyond just taking courses, a test in school.
Absolutely.
Great. So another question we have, so how important is it to quantify your accomplishments in your profile summary or position summary?
Let me take that one. It's a delicate matter. And, the thing is, you want to definitely show that you've had improvements. However, there may be things that you've done from a professional standpoint that a company might consider proprietary that they don't want to necessarily have out there publicly. So I think it's one thing to have on your resume is more of a one-to-one document. You're going to send it to somebody. It's going to be more private documentation. But I think when it comes to the LinkedIn profile, I think you can say that you generally, you increased revenues, you increased productivity X%. But I would stay away from putting in dollar figures. I would stay away from putting anything on that's too sensitive. Recruiters and hiring managers will fully understand that you don't want to get too detailed on a LinkedIn profile.
Great, thank you for that answer. So another question, so if my profile is 100% complete and optimized, what do I do next?
All right. Well, I think the next thing is, start getting out there. Start doing the networking. Think about the job search process as a three-step process. Number one is whatever you do, if you're going to apply online, you do that. Step two is you find a contact at the company that is a decision maker, and step three is reach out to them. That's the way you're going to hopefully get around the line. Keep in mind, I've got a friend who works at a leading e-commerce company. You can figure out who it is. And they basically said that they get about approximately 10,000 people that apply to any given job. So the more that you can do to stand above and to really make that human connection, don't rely exclusively on passive attraction of people to your profile. You're still going to need to go out there and do some lead generation.
Yeah, and to follow up with what Scott said, I'm a big fan of having an actual strategy, having a plan, a roadmap. Call it what you will, but have something in writing, and you want to really laser in on the types of positions that you're targeting. I'm a big fan of having a target list of employers. So you can use LinkedIn to help research and put that list together. That list should be changing weekly, if not daily. And I would keep that list at 25 to 50 so you can really focus on all the things you need to do to put your name in front of those list of employers. And then I like to break down, a lot of folks say, well, I'm going to try to find out who the hiring manager is, and that's great. I would actually recommend, let's take it a step further. Who are the types of people at that company that can help me? And I'll give you a few examples. You could reach out to the head of supply chain. I know when I recruited at some of these large corporations like Home Depot, if you reached out to the top person, the CEO and those top executives, those resumes would usually come filtering down to me, and I think the same thing applies if you reach out to someone on LinkedIn. Oftentimes you'll get referred to someone else that might be doing the actual hiring. You could also reach out to corporate recruiters and agency recruiters like myself. Make sure you get in with the right recruiters, of course. So do some research there to make sure the people you're working with represent the types of industries or positions or functions that you're most interested in, or the geographic location. I would say if you could find an HR partner that supports supply chain, if you're looking at a position in a plant or a warehouse, oftentimes if they're a certain size, they'll have their own HR person or team or recruiter, and those are great people to reach out to. And then looking at the actual department manager is another good resource. That probably is going to be the hiring manager. And then lastly, it doesn't hurt to reach out to peers that are doing the work that you're doing now, or if you've got a certain job title in mind that you're looking to move up into, reach out to people that are in those roles now. They're going to be the best people that can tell you about what they do, and hopefully they can help get your foot in the door as well.
The only thing I want to add to that is the one person who probably should be bottom of your list on that is the recruiter. The recruiters are so overwhelmed with looking through resumes that they're probably not going to, if you reach out to them and say, hey, I've applied to X job, they're probably not necessarily going to look as hard at your resume. But what I will say is if you have a nice, sincere presentation and you do reach out to a recruiter at the company, in a general sense, say, hey, your company has been on my radar. I'd love the opportunity to speak to you for just a couple minutes to see what I can do to strengthen my candidacy with your company. Recruiters do have a sense of compassion, and they will, from time to time, respond to those types of emails. And if you do make a good impression, they'll keep you in mind for roles.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for about one or two more questions. So this one, I will be graduating with a degree in supply chain management. Is this enough to stand out to recruiters and if I'm interested in a job in that area, or would it be worthwhile to get my master's? How much would this improve my job prospects?
Well, I'll take that one. Right now, the supply chain talent gap is real, and having recruited in supply chain for a little over 17 years, I've just watched it evolve big time, and I would say we are right now experiencing the tightest labor market ever in supply chain. And what's driving that really is, over the last couple of decades, supply chain really hasn't been that popular of a function. It's really gotten popular in the last 2 decades. So a lot of people that are coming up from the academic ranks, let's call it K through 12 and on up, haven't really pursued careers. And then you got all these technology companies out there, the Facebooks, the Googles of the world are attracting a lot of millennials and so forth. So we haven't had it's just supply and demand. We haven't had enough people come up through the ranks into these supply chain degree programs. So I wanted to point that out. There is a major talent gap, and it exists in just about every function and every industry that's out there. So the good news is, you should be able to get out there, and especially if you're mobile, in other words, open to relocation, that certainly opens up a lot of doors. So I don't know if you really need to go out and get your master's degree right away. It really depends on the type of position that you're targeting. I would recommend it's better to test the waters, find an opportunity, figure out what you really like to do, what you're passionate about, what your career goals are, and then once you get out into the real workforce, determine, hey, do I want and do I need to go back to school? And then pull out an ROI calculator, do the math, and just based on your career goals, based on the cost of getting that additional degree, is that going to be worth it in the long run? Right now I don't think it's 100% necessary, but for certain positions it absolutely is.
Great, thank you. And for our last question, do you guys have any tips for getting more responses on emails sent to, hiring managers or recruiters?
I'll take this one from first, and then Rod, I'll let you chime in too. But I think the best thing you can do is try to think about the length of messages from the sense of how large the screen is on your cell phone. The hiring manager is going to be sitting there at lunch, and they're going to be browsing through their phone while they're standing in line at Chipotle. Is your message short and punchy enough that it's going to get the attention? Basically, what I recommend is 3 lines. I have applied online to your position, or whatever it is that you've done. I have exactly the skills that you're looking for, and detail a couple of them. I can be reached at at phone number and email X, Y, and Z. Short and sweet. People want to see that you're the solution to their problems and well-timed.
Yeah, and I would add to that the goal of reaching out through InMail, it is not to detail every single thing you've ever done for every single employer throughout your career. A lot of people, and I know Scott as a resume writer will tell you, a lot of people will have 3, 4, 5 pages of content thinking that, oh, wow, this person's going to be blown away. Guess what? No one's ever going to read 3 to 5 pages of content, whether it's in an InMail or on your resume. Your goal when you send a message, whether it's an email or an InMail, is, like Scott said, I'd say 3 sentences, 5 max, and you want to communicate those key points. And the goal is to take that digital communication. You want to move that to some type of a live conversation, whether that's a phone call or a coffee meeting. Always have a call to action in mind. What do I want to get out of this recipient that I'm targeting? Oftentimes it's going to be a quick phone call to see, if that person can help or explain more about the role or and so forth. They give you a referral. Just make sure you have a call to action anytime you send out a message, and again, keep it 3 to 5 bullet points.
Yeah, always be the solution to somebody's problem. As long as you're presenting things in that way, it's going to help your candidacy.
Yeah, and lastly, the subject line. You want to make sure that you have a subject line that is going to catch their attention. And marketers will tell you, you can have the greatest content in the body of the message, but if you don't have the right subject line and no one opens it, it's not going to get read. So make sure you're putting as much emphasis or time into concocting the best subject line that you can that's going to get someone that's going to want to click open, but just make sure you're not fibbing anything or putting any false advertisements in that subject line.
Okay, great. So we want to just thank our speakers, Rodney, Apple, and Scott Singer, for their time today. As a reminder, if anyone's interested in receiving a copy of this presentation, please feel free to reach out to Rodney or Scott, and they will happily provide you the PowerPoint slides. Did you guys have anything else to add?
They'll get a copy of the recorded webinar as well. Everyone, even if you didn't make the webinar, you should get an email that will contain a link to the copy so you can go back in case you had to jump off the call and missed anything.
Absolutely.
But thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to either of us.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right, so this concludes our webinar. Thank you all for